you so much for joining us today, and thank you at home for tuning in today. We want to talk a little bit about forgiveness. We teach our children to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you. We also teach them to say, I'm sorry. But do we teach them what I'm sorry really means? You know, there was a little 5-year-old and signed up to go to one of his little friend's birthday parties, but something came up, he couldn't make it. And the next thing they knew, they're getting an invoice in the mail, being charged for not coming to the party. So at this point in time, you've got a lot going on now with the parents, and children are watching the parents. So how do we handle that with our children?
You know what, forgiveness, I think that the problem with it is that people place conditions on whether they should forgive or not. And those conditions are based on whether they feel they've gotten restitution, you know, for the wrongful things that have been done to them. Yeah.
When I read that article, the thing that stuck out to me is we've always learned that behavior is caught more than taught. Mm-hmm. And what did that 5-year-old see with the disputing parents, the invoice, the dad going and showing up at the parents' house? That is not forgiveness. And the children were watching, mm-hmm. and they're watching us. We can tell them forgive,
but be careful, they might show up nowadays with a gun.
Yeah. You never know. We've got to be a role model. You're right. It's got to start from us, not only with our kids, but in our communities, in our homes, in our businesses, everywhere we are. If we don't model forgiveness, and forgiveness is not an easy thing to do, but you're right, it is taught.
Yeah, we do definitely have to model it, and I think it starts with parents, and then modeling that by forgiving our kids, mm-hmm. forgiving in the community, mm-hmm. forgiving in our jobs. You know, all through life, there's opportunities to model that behavior and show kids. I think that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard.
Well, our kids are going to do what they see us to do. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, but the mom that invoiced the other parent over a child not coming to the birthday party, we would probably owe
thousands. Very elaborate birthday party.
We would. It wasn't skiing, I believe. Skiing was very expensive, so. Yeah.
Well, it was $24, and I agree that's a lot for a lot of people.
$24 for a ski? No, I think it's $2,400.
No, I don't think. Well, per child. Exactly. No, per child. And when you looked at the scheme of things, I sat back and I thought, was this mother not going to pay the $24 whether the child came or not? She was. She was going to pay the $24 if the child came. True. The child had grandparents show up at the last minute and needed to be with the grandparents. I think you're right. I think what she modeled, and then how the parents also responded, although you can't blame the parents who got the invoice for being upset, but you're right, I think there still is an opportunity for them to show a forgiveness for that mom who didn't behave right, because we can't change how other people behave.
Right.
We can certainly change how we behave.
That's exactly right.
You know, I think if she had a problem, you know, with someone not showing up, which is, you know, always a probability when you're inviting people, then you let someone know in the invitation, if you don't come, I'm going to charge you. If you don't call by a certain time,
that would have been the thing. Put it in the invitation. If you don't show up, it's going to cost you this much.
Right. How many people would RSVP?
The whole thing about that modeling, and it's sad that we live in a day and age where the parents act like children, and they're not teaching the children how to actually forgive. I know when my daughter was growing up, she would have a tendency, you know, if she did something and that one of the other children would say, tell her you're sorry. She goes, sorry, and that is not forgiveness. And I had read this once. You look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry that I took your whatever, and so that she actually had to say the thing she was sorry for.
Definitely.
And because just a sorry is not, it is not really.
Say, please forgive me.
Yes.
You know,
oh,
absolutely. Ask your forgiveness.
And I think also we have to make sure that as we're modeling, we use proper techniques. You know, as a parent, are we going to really teach our children how to really be genuine in their efforts to forgive if there are going to be some self-imposed consequences? There's a quick story about a lady who had a parrot, and the parrot was always saying mean things to her. So one day she decided she was going to teach the parrot a lesson, and she stuck the parrot in the freezer for just a few seconds. And even while the parrot was in the freezer, he kept making bad comments about her. For about 10 seconds, then it stopped, so she opened the freezer because she thought she killed the parrot. But when she opened the freezer, the parrot automatically began to apologize and tell her he was sorry. He'll never say these things to her again. So she asked, what made you change your mind so suddenly? He said, when I looked around and saw that what you did to all those chickens in there, I decided I better change my life.
Oh my goodness.
So is that how we're going to teach our children that, you know, there are going to be consequences, you know, if you don't forgive?
You know what I think the key is also is to, you know, teach that, you know, about unforgiveness. It's not about saying what was done wrong is okay. It's just not holding that against that person.
It's canceling that
Yeah,
debt.
yeah.
It's absolutely canceling that debt. And Dawn, you made a very good point. When my husband and I were in counseling, one thing he taught us was, I was so accustomed to saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. That's just something you come out as a child and you get used to. And he said, you know, you take it to a totally different level and you say, I was wrong. Ooh. Instead of saying I was sorry, I was wrong to do this. I know it made you feel.
That's harder to say.
It is harder to say. And then you talk about how you recognize how it made the other person feel. I know this made you feel mistrusted, disrespected, whatever it may be. Will you forgive me? So there's 3 important steps in that
And when
pattern.
you say I'm sorry, don't say I'm sorry, but
Oh,
because
no.
but negates
Everything.
negates what you just said. And then the person goes back to feeling bad again. So just acknowledge that person, not yourself in the in the apology, but you've got to let them know that they are forgiven and and we're not going to hold it against you anymore. Let it go.
Let it go.
And the first to apologize really is the bravest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're the hero.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is good.